So this show isn't about baseball.
Here's the wind-up and the pitch perfect.
Hello, my name is Montero, and thank you for joining me on my journey to watch every TV show and every sitcom ever created. Not really, but we are gonna get close. I'm just teasing y'all. I know what the Pitch Perfect series are, and I love the movies. I think the first two are just hilarious. The third one, it's aight. I mean, it's not as bad as everyone claims it to be, but I mean, their reasons are perfectly valid. I wasn't sure if we would ever see a new Pitch Perfect installment due to the fact that everyone has, honestly, everybody's moved on since Pitch Perfect 2. Everyone except for Elizabeth Banks, of course, because she comes back as one of the producers of this show. And let me tell you, oh boy, you totally feel Banks' hand in this. That's more or less a compliment toward her art style. It is very unique, and I think that people should have a very distinct voice, and she definitely does have a distinct voice. Despite that, though, she thought we all wanted more Pitch Perfect, and she gave us, well, Pitch Perfect, Bumper in Berlin. I had no idea that this was even a thing. If it weren't for the fact that I paid for 1 month's worth of Peacock just so I can see the Dolly, Parton, and Miley Cyrus New Year's show. So I'm honestly trying to binge as much shows as I possibly can. I'm planning to do a month-end review for January because honestly, I think I did pretty well. But if it weren't for that fact, I probably would have never caught wind of this project even existing, which is incredibly weird because I am a Sarah Hyland fan. However, about 1.5 years ago, I kind of did see, maybe even 2 years ago, an article or report about something about like a new Sarah Hyland and Adam Devine project in the works, but everything was a little hush-hush. And that this was going to be the next thing that Sarah Hyland does after Modern Family. Hindsight, that was this project. So for those of you whose hearts are still yearning for some Andy and Haley from Modern Family, here you go. This is kind of one of those what-if situations. I don't know what I'm doing, but I think it's working. This review is a spoiler-free review, by the way, so that everyone can partake on the discussion. Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin takes place 10 years after the events of the original films and follows Bumper as he has transitioned from trying to make it as a singer to trying to stay relevant as an artist in a world filled with TikTok and other artists also trying to stay relevant. It is only after an old familiar friend presents an opportunity for him to move to and perform in Berlin after one of his mashups goes viral on TikTok in said Berlin. It is there he faces many twists and turns that embarks him on his way to finally grow up, even though he is a fully fledged adult by this point. There's both good and bad to be said about this show, so let's just focus in on the bad first, and then I'm gonna end with the good. I want to leave you all with a good taste in your mouth by the time we are done discussing this show, mainly because everybody who discusses the show on YouTube and anywhere else, I mean, I see what they're saying, but I did have a good time. So I'm gonna get the obvious glaring issues out of the way, and then hopefully I'm gonna leave a good taste in your mouth so that you can hopefully go see it if you are paying for Peacock. So to help you understand that I'm not trying to rag on this show, I'm going to say one good thing, and I also want to say that most of my gripes and nitpicks come from the first 3 episodes of this series. The second half of this show is solid and a fun ride. Sure, a little bit predictable here and there, but a fun ride nevertheless. So, making a quick assessment, the first 3 are a bit rough because of its cliche plot and narrative, but they're not unbearable. Episodes 4 through 6, however, are better and are worth the push through. I also want to give you my rating first so that you can stick through the rest of the review if you want to. My rating for Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin is a, oh, nope, that has changed. Where is Bumper in Berlin? Where is that rating? 7, got it, okay. My rating for Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin is a 7 out of 10, or a 70%. Chapter times are in the description below. Alright, let's start off with the bad. Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin, a show that doesn't quite know what its predecessors are exactly and tries way too hard to try not to look like they're not trying too hard. I had so many takes for that. Decipher that one. The grammar is there. Something that I loved about the original films is that they technically weren't musicals. I do love me a good musical though, not operettas. There are a difference. There is a difference. Grammar! However, the Pitch Perfect movies were competition movies. So each time they sang a song, it was for a competition or there was narrative reasons to make all of the singing makes sense. The songs in those movies were never for random, silly musical sing-song one's feelings for exposition's sake, like a musical would do. Bumper in Berlin tries desperately hard to recapture that magic of the original films while trying still to do its own thing. I cannot say that it fully failed, but I can say that it does feel totally awkward at times, but I attribute that to the writing. But this show does think it is a musical, but it's not. It needs to be it's supposed to be a music competition show, and sometimes sing-song exposition happens, and you're just like, whoa, what? And speaking about the music, for a show based on music, there really is very little amount of music, and the music that are, the singers aren't the greatest singers. Except for Sarah Hyland, she carries the whole singing musical aspect of this show. But we will get to that when we get there. So speaking of the writing, honestly, it's a mixed bag. The writing is all over the place, but overall, it's kind of just mid. This show tries to remind you that it is part of the Pitch Perfect universe ever so often because of the amount of music in this show is actually kind of scarce. Which, I mean, I guess it makes sense because it's Bumper. Which, why? Why? Of all the characters in this franchise, why the one who isn't the strongest vocally? Sure, Bumper's musical ear and his producing and his mixing skills are way more than an artist needs to make it in this day and age. But a whole show dedicated to him, to Bumper? I really do understand the motivations behind their narrative choices. I just feel those same choices could have been executed more effectively. Rather, we got something that, in my personal opinion, was a little cliche. The plot is incredibly cliche and predictable. Beat by beat, it's nothing new. It's nothing that we have not seen before. But again, it's about Bumper. What's gonna get you through the show is you're caring about Bumper. Whether you've seen this type of story, cliche or not, you're gonna stick around for Bumper. And honestly, I say stick around. Sure, again, I cannot stress how incredibly obvious and cliche the plot of this story is. There are a couple twists that really did catch me off guard that I was really happy about. But in the end, as someone who has seen the show, I can tell you right here, right now, I was satisfied and I had a nice payoff by the end of the show. And I'm excited that a season 2 was announced. So there you go. Now we are in the bad part of the review. But next, the pacing. It's just a little rough on its way there. The pacing, as is almost anything with just 6 23-minute episodes, is very bad. Things happen way too quickly in the show. You just had to have the biggest suspended disbelief. When I was writing this review, I actually suddenly did the math, and I realized the reason why they did 6 23-minute episodes is because if you add them all together, it comes out to be a feature-length film right around the same length of the Pitch Perfect films. They're treating this show as if it's a movie, as if they can just fully break apart a movie and make it into a show, and that's not how that works. And really, honestly, if you think about this show as a long movie, I guess, it's not even a long movie, it's just if you manage to sit down and binge all 6 episodes, it's like you are watching a movie, through and through. But a lot happens so quickly, it doesn't allow for any of the characters or the story or us to breathe and to digest what we just saw. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I did have to rewind a few times because I was just confused how we got from point A to point E. Not a huge jump, but significant for sure. If this show were 8 episodes, I think it would give us enough breathing room for us to grasp the full story without having to jump around for the sake of moving plots forward. Last on the bad is the humor. I think there are some jokes in this that were added for the sake of having clever humor, and some of those jokes really did elicit a few giggles from me. I honestly thought that this show was supposed to be just a bit mellow and like a comedy drama, so not really fully heavy on the humor, just more on the drama and the heartfeltness. I thought the purpose was for it to bring a smile to my face, to all our faces, but to my face. However, this is not labeled as a comedy drama, it's labeled as a full-on comedy, so I was a little confused because this show isn't really that funny. The humor is entirely toned down, and sometimes it doesn't even really work or even land. Humor nowadays is headed towards this really weird, quirky personality humor that isn't necessarily landing in a lot of projects, especially those Netflix sitcoms. those Netflix sitcoms, those hooligan sitcoms that are not good. Netflix, get your act together. But this quirky humor is very specific and it's unique, and it only leads to everyone being the comic relief. Which, if everyone's the comic relief, nobody is. Thank you, Syndrome. That's not exactly what happened here. In fact, the opposite. Nobody really was the comic relief in this because no one was really that funny, but it was still somewhat entertaining. It is kind of perplexing to me that something is labeled a comedy show, but the humor is very, very weak. But again, it has happened, aka Netflix. It is more on the lines of entertaining rather than comedically funny. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if you go into it thinking it's a comedy drama rather than just a full-on comedy, because if you think it's a full-on comedy, you're gonna be disappointed. So finally, The Good. Honestly, The Good is gonna be a little bit short and sweet for you. Truthfully, the characters, solid in this show. Each character is their own individual and each actor brings it to the table, man. You can genuinely tell they're having lots of fun on this show, and that honestly translates and it feeds you. It feeds you while you watch the show. Everyone does such a good fun job that you kind of just overlook the issues of the show, and that's why this is the first good that I mentioned on this list, is because you are having fun with the actors, because you do love these characters so much, and the actors are working so desperately hard with what they are given, because honestly, let's be real, the dialogue, it can be incredibly cringy at times. But those actors are making it work and delivering those lines like nobody's business. And it's so compelling that you just, what else can you do but ignore the problems? Jameela Jamil, there's something about everybody wanting to cast her as a villain in things now after The Good Place. It's like she did a 180 in terms of roles she's cast in, but I welcome it. I just wish she is given more to do with than just a few minutes of screen time every time she appears, and more than just a Kim Kardashian impression. She does a superb job, and she's an incredibly talented individual. I honestly just really want to see her be a fully fledged malicious villain. I think she has the acting chops to do it. Her singing, though, is incredibly auto-tuned, and it's a little hard to overlook the fact that she is supposed to be this amazing, the best of the best singers, this rival for Bumper, except her Gazella can't really sing, in my opinion. I don't know. In the end, she really was a great opposition personality-wise for Bumper. Sarah Hyland. Oh my goodness, I love her. She's one of the ones that I was saying earlier that does really well with what she is given. She makes this whole new type of character work for her, and it's nice to see her grow after Modern Family. It's also very lovely to see her share screen time with Adam Devine again after Modern Family. Honestly, Sarah Hyland did not do Haley. She didn't do Haley. She did Heidi. I think it's incredible whenever actors are able to be a stereotype and then be a version of that stereotype, but be entirely different. Sarah Hyland, Glenn Howerton are just two that I can think of at the moment who can just be them, but not be them because they're acting as other people. It's I don't know, it's insane. It's insane. Glenn Howerton because of It's Always Sunny, Dennis Reynolds, and AP Bio, Jack Griffin. If you haven't seen those shows, you must. AP Bio, just saw it. Peacock. It's a good show. Now, even though I said a lot of negative things about this show, it still works as a Bumper in Berlin show. This show is about Bumper and his journey, not about the girls in their college. This is about him. So of course it's going to be a little bit different. So when you keep that in mind, it's pretty good. It's solid. It's exactly what you would expect. It's fun, it's tingly in my arteries, and it's a pitch perfect show to just put on and quickly binge as a mind relaxer, something that you don't have to pay the fullest attention to, but do pay attention to some details. But again, it's such a cliche story that if you miss 7 minutes of the show, you'll be quickly brought up to speed. All in all, this show is kind of entirely unnecessary and has little payoff for the overall Pitch Perfect franchise, but it is entirely heartwarming, charming, and perfectly welcome in my book. It left a smile on my face. To recap, the first 3 episodes are a little rough, but they're not unbearable. Push through and you're in for a good, nice second half treat. Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin honestly deserves the time of day, as I see a lot of potential for this show, and like I mentioned earlier, it was renewed for a season 2. So I'm gonna have to renew Peacock eventually sometime this year because there's so many things I want to watch. And season 2 of Bumper in Berlin is definitely one of them, but that's probably not gonna come until next year. Well, that is it. What did you think? Are you gonna check out Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin on Peacock, streaming only on Peacock? Have you already seen it? If you have, what did you think about it? What is your rating? Once again, my rating for this is a 7 out of 10. The first season of Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin can be streamed only on Peacock, for which you can sign up now and watch many wonderful content like I did that you can only find on Peacock. Not sponsored, but I would definitely like to be. Please. Anyway, my social media links are in the description below. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time. You've just been Montified.